So as much as I know that we're both very busy and probably doing this is it's probably gonna upset some people because we've got stuff to do, but I think this is important. So thank you for coming on the show, Kairun.
No, thank you for having me.
I know this is gonna be an interesting one because you and I have a long history of being friends.
Yeah.
And there is like to be professional on a set like this is gonna be a little bit interesting how we're gonna do this. But I want to tell people who are paying attention and following this that you reached out to me maybe a couple of weeks ago, and no, maybe just last week. You watched me do a live stream with chat, and you've listened to what we had to say, and I think you really wanted to get on the show and talk a little bit about your experiences because you're quite the interesting dude, man. I think a couple weeks ago, or actually a couple months ago, I'd been following you, and you've been talking to me about how you had made some plans to sort of uproot your life in Canada and move towards another part of the world, and that is Germany. So today, we're going to try and figure out what you've been up to, where in the world you are, and so that I can learn a little bit from you, Kairun.
Yeah, for sure. Fire away.
Oh, okay. So you want me to start with the...
Yeah, fire away.
Okay, first of all, where are you right now, man? Where are you?
So I'm in Erlangen. It's a university city, but it's also it's a business city as well. So there's a good mix of university students and I guess you could say middle-aged yuppies and maybe a lot like 40-year-olds as well. So Siemens is, I'm sure you're aware of Siemens, like a bit headquarters here in Germany. But there's that as well, and then a couple of universities. So there's a good blend. I like to think Erlangen is a very up-and-coming city in the world. And so just to give everybody a geographical sense of Erlangen, it's in southern Germany, so Bavaria. And Bavarians, or you can almost say even Franconians, they like to think themselves as the very traditional Germans versus the people up north, east or west, right? Like Berlin, Hamburg, and so forth. So yeah, that's where I am right now.
That's very cool. You're at a library that's in the city, or are you in a school campus? Where are you right now?
So the library I'm at, it's the FAU library. So it is a university library, but it is in the middle of the city. So the central of Erlangen is called Zentrum. And yeah, that's where this is. And it's a public library, right? So you can come in, anyone could use it. And I don't have any home internet for the time being because I'm trying to see if I can survive without that. And because I find that having home internet can be a nuisance at times, especially when I should be focusing on my studies.
I have to say, though, the internet quality is very good at a public library.
It's amazing.
So maybe we'll start off by talking about how technology is compared to Canada, where you are right now. I guess you're from you're from Toronto, so you go into a public library in Toronto to go into a library and to do this live stream, I don't think would be as good quality. So what's the tech like? Modern tech like?
Modern tech like over tech wise, I would say it's behind compared to Toronto. Like for instance, take the debit card or the MasterCard for instance. You know how if you go to Canada, everybody uses tap, right? Yeah. Some people even have their cards on their phones now. They have like Apple Pay and all that kind of stuff. They don't carry their cards around anymore. But here, they haven't really accepted the tap technology yet because Germany is a very bureaucratic and non-risk take country, right? Huh. So it's actually really similar to Japan. I come here and then I like to think of almost Germans as the European Japanese people in the world. So when I first got my my debit card, for instance, it took me a month for me to actually get my debit card. And funny story, before actually coming to Germany, the day before my flight, I lost my debit card. So I have my CIBC debit card, and I thought, you know, it's probably good to have my Canadian debit card, at least if I ever in an emergency, if I'm in Germany, I can still use it to take out money, right, from my Canadian funds. But I was freaking out because I thought I'm leaving tomorrow. There's no way that bank's gonna give me a card right away. Luckily enough, I found one bank in Mississauga that has that were open. I went in, I told them the situation. They're like, yeah, we'll give you a debit card like right away, no problem. I had to sign a few documents, you know, ask her some security questions, show my ID. And then here in Erlangen, I go to open up a bank, and the process is I get 5 pieces of mail. And one of them is my debit card, One of them is my debit card PIN. One of them is my PIN for my online banking. One of them is my username for online banking. And the other one was, I'm not sure, but you probably get an idea of how secure Germany is. So in like comparing that to Canada, it was a real pain in the ass. Excuse my French. But yeah, and it's just like the way it is over here, right? And like I tell them that in Canada, you get it like right away. And they say like Germany, we like to play it safe because you never know, like something could happen, right? So even if you go to the grocery store and all that kind of stuff, it's no one uses tap. You always got to put in your PIN.
Do you use cash a lot in Germany?
I try to use cash. Yeah. I'm not sure why. I think it's maybe because I'm not really familiar with the banking system yet, I guess, or the words and what's yes or what's no, or like when is it telling me to enter the PIN and all that kind of stuff. Cash is universal, right? Like I don't need to know a language.
Yes. I'm looking at the map here, and Germany has a lot of cities that are very well known, right? So we have, I guess you're north of Nuremberg. So I guess when you flew in, that's where you flew in to get to Erlangen, right? Erlangen. So is that where you flew in?
Yeah, I flew into Nuremberg. So Erlangen is about maybe 15-20 minute drive.
Oh, okay.
Away from Nuremberg, yeah.
And what's the population of Erlangen?
What's that?
What's the population
of Erlangen?
Yeah.
I'm not 100% sure.
It says here about 100,000 people.
It's let's see.
Thunder Bay.
A good comparison for those listening on this right now. Erlangen would be kind of like Hamilton.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to put it. It's like Hamilton, except it's just European. So brick roads, all the buildings are really like small, put together. It's quaint. It's a really quaint place.
And the buildings, most buildings. Oh, I don't know all of Europe, but like when I have traveled to Europe and pictures that I see, most buildings still have that historical look to it. They kept a lot of their history, and they don't do the big box, built houses that we build in Toronto in the suburbs and stuff. But I'm sure there are suburbs in Germany that all look the same, though, right?
Yeah, there's I guess you could say villages.
Okay.
Right. But even the villages, like you compare them to, let's say, like a small town, like in, I don't know, Malton or something like that. It's totally different. Like in Canada, when you think of like a small town, you think of farmland. At least I find in the Toronto area, right? But versus here, it's not really farmland. It's actually, Alan, you love it. It's like horticulture land. Everyone just has gardens around here. Yeah.
Okay, so
that's a slight difference like that.
It's funny because when we talk about Germany, it's like we're talking about Canada, and Canada is so big, and I think Germany is just as big in terms of cultural differences. And I was listening to a podcast before coming on the show, and I know that Germany was split up by hundreds of different cultural demarcations, way back when, and then there was East and West Germany, and now there's got to be so much of that still resonating in where you are, but. If I talk about where you are, should I say Nuremberg or Erlangen? Or do people get upset when we confuse the two?
Wait, hold on. You cut off a little bit there.
Oh, sorry. I meant like, do people get upset would people get upset if I said that, oh, you're in Nuremberg? It's just like if I was to tell people, oh, I'm from Toronto, but really I'm from Mississauga. Do people feel that?
So you mean if I go up to a German and I tell them, hey, like I'm from, if I mistakenly say I'm from this city versus, is that what you're trying to ask?
I guess is it strong enough? Is Erlangen strong enough on its own that it's separate from Nuremberg?
No. Erlangen is, like I said, it's an up and coming city. So it's interesting enough, near Erlangen, there is the headquarters for Puma and Adidas. Huh. It's in a very small, it's even smaller than Erlangen. It's in like a village almost. And I was on my BlaBlaCar. BlaBlaCar is, have you heard of BlaBlaCar?
No, tell me more.
So I was talking about BlaBlaCar, and then I'll lead into the story. So BlaBlaCar, it's kind of like an Uber service, except you can travel through cities. So what happens is, let's say there is a driver, and I used BlaBlaCar to go to Berlin about a month ago, and it's cheaper than the bus, especially if you book it last minute. So I went on the BlaBlaCar website and I typed in I want to go to Berlin, and then it brings out a list of drivers. And these drivers, they have profiles, they have credibility, if they're polite, if they're punctual, and all that kind of stuff. So I typed in on BlaBlaCar, and one of the passengers in the BlaBlaCar ride with me to Berlin was he's an employee for Adidas, and he was telling me a little bit about how Adidas, and he was I think from Sri Lanka. He's Sri Lankan, living in Germany, right? I believe he's an engineer, and he's living in this small town only for work. And he was in Berlin visiting his girlfriend, and this Adidas headquarters is really similar to Google, right? They have like a gym, a sauna, a restaurant, all home amenities. You can live on the campus that they call it, right? But it's the only downfall is it's located in this very small town. And I said, don't you find that's like a little bit weird, because a big company like Adidas or Puma, you think that they should be in larger cities, right, where they get a lot of attraction.
Right.
But no, that wasn't the case. And that's because the founder of Adidas was actually born in this small village. So he felt, you know what, it's only right that because he's from that small village, that the headquarters should also be there as well. So there's this dilemma, I guess you would say, that this employee feels as well, is that even though Adidas, they treat their employees properly, they provide them with amenities, right? The money is decent, but the truth is no one wants to come to a small town to work and live. Right? So like there was like a discussion going on there about like how I found that doesn't really make sense, right? But I mean, economically speaking, it's a smart move, because you're in a small village. That headquarters is actually providing funding to the entire village as well, right? So it'll help it grow. But I find that if I were, let's say, a consultant and I got hired, or if I wanted to work at that Adidas, then just that location enough, even the amenities are so great, would be very unappealing to me. So yeah, it's
what traveling have you done then in this area?
So this weekend, I actually just came back from Austria. I came back from Austria last night at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Huh.
Yeah.
I went up there.
No, I went for a snowboarding trip. The school organized a snowboarding trip. It was nice.
Did you fly out there?
No, we took a bus.
A bus from Erlangen to Austria. Which part of Austria were you in?
So the closest, I guess you could say, town, it's called Innsbruck.
Innsbruck.
Innsbruck. It's about a 4-hour drive.
I'm looking at it right now, and it seems like actually 4 hour. It's a 4-hour drive.
Yeah.
I'm trying to understand. That's like from Toronto to Ottawa.
Yeah, exactly. So like where Erlangen is, it's South Germany, so it borders pretty much Switzerland and Austria and Czech Republic, like along that side.
Oh, okay. And was it beautiful?
So it was amazing. It was the best mountain that I've been to, for sure. If for everyone listening, if you like to ski or snowboard, or even sledding, right, or snowshoeing, any winter activity, go to Ginter Tuxe Gletscher. Okay, and I'm trying to say as German as possible.
That's right? Pretty good. Wait, where compare it to? I don't know. Have you been to Banff?
I haven't been to Banff, no, so okay. I can't compare it. But
Tremblant. You've been to Tremblant.
It's nothing like Tremblant. Tremblant is like it's like a little mountain. Like this will be Tremblant, and then this will be like Hinterglitze.
Oh wow!
So like give you a little comparison.
When you passed the border, did they have to check your passport?
So that was interesting, because I brought my passport, because exactly like you said, we're crossing the border, right? But no, I think the border passing is more like just a pay toll. It's just a toll. Like I saw the driver stop and pay a toll, and then we just like went through. It might not have been the border, but if that wasn't it, then we didn't stop for a border stop.
That's so strange, because then it's just free passage.
And I'm wondering if it's because it's part of the EU.
Or it could be the company that you're with, like the school, or I don't know. That's interesting. Possibly, the EU has free pass. Like what I understand is that anyone carrying a EU passport has free passage through any European Union country. But they still have to check your passport, correct? Because what if you decided that you're gonna go work in Austria, like you decided that, look, I'm gonna Erlangen. drop out of school, and then I'm going to go to Austria. I'm going to go over to Vienna. I'm going to start working on as a cafe at a local cafe. What happens then? You know?
Okay, so I think working would be a whole different story because, like, for instance, I'm gonna apply for my residence permit tomorrow, and like I said, Germany, like for instance, is very bureaucratic, right? So there's strict rules there's even a certain amount of hours that I can work in the country as a student. So I think if I were to go to Austria and apply for work, once they check my documents, that's when the whole that's when they get really political, I think, into it, and then start doing things by the book. Having said that, I'm not trying to say that you can just like easily just cross into Austria, but yeah, who knows? It was interesting, I guess, in that sense that I had no idea that they wouldn't have to show my passport to get to Austria.
As you were taking that bus ride down, did you pass through Munich, or did you guys go down the rural path of somewhere else?
We went through the rural path. Keep in mind that we actually left Erlangen at 2 a.m.
Oh, okay.
We left at 2 a.m. so that way we can get to the mountain for the morning at 8.
Oh my God.
Yeah, but even on the way back, we left the mountains around 7, and yeah, we never passed through Munich.
Okay.
Right, because I think just like any other city, you don't want to go near a city, right? It's just gonna be busy.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And eventually, I think you will probably go to Munich and check it out. Correct?
I'm gonna go on the 14th before I go to Japan.
Oh, and that's going to be exciting. What about anywhere else? Like there's Berlin that I'm looking at the map and it seems very far. And there's Hamburg and Cologne and Frankfurt. All these other places, are you going to check those out?
Yeah, so Berlin, definitely. It's my favorite capital city in the world. And okay, so when you think about a capital city, like what are some features of a capital city?
I guess economic center, culture, the most representative of the country, the best representation of the country itself, politics, and I guess power.
All right, so I'm glad that you said those things because Berlin is actually none of that. It's the only capital that I've been to that actually doesn't have any of that. So economically speaking, Berlin actually has no income whatsoever. And like the city itself is, if you visit, like you go, you see it. I don't want to say the word dirty because it has a very negative connotation to it, but it's a fact. It's a very dirty city. It's like the slums. It's like Queens, kind of. You go there and it's like, this is the capital of Germany. Like that can't be right. In terms of culture and internationalism, huge. Like for instance, when I got on that blah blah car ride and I got onto the sidewalks, the first language that I heard was English. Right, and then landing in Nuremberg and Erlangen, like there's just German is the main language you hear on the streets around here, but Berlin was English, so that like right off the bat kind of
it's quite the international city then.
Yeah, for sure.
Can you I guess live comfortably speaking English only in Germany?
In Berlin, definitely. In this city, Erlangen, no. But I mean, like I think any country, if you're going to be living here, then I don't see why you would not try to learn the language. It's like one of the best ways that you can assimilate yourself, right, with the environment and with the people. And it also, it doesn't hurt to, even though you know you might not be saying correctly, just you trying, like the attempt, like people will respect that, right? And that's universal. I think any country I visited, and even Germany around here, Erlangen, because it's Bavarian, it's a very traditional area. So you can make that attempt, and they will appreciate that you're attempting, even though like they're not going to understand what you're saying. At least for me. And
what about minorities? How demographics?
Turkish people.
Okay.
In Erlangen, there is a very large Turkish population. So there's a large Turkish community. There's a Turkish grocery store. A lot of Turkish people around here. They also they're bilingual in German.
That's interesting. Why the Turkish presence?
I don't know. Actually, it's a good question. But like they've I don't know if the Germans, they let the Turkish people in, or there must have been some kind of like historical
Yeah.
significance.
Here's a question for you, Kairun. Do you think that it's important? I mean, this is kind of an obvious question, but how important is it that history informs our understanding of the present?
If you asked me that question maybe 8 years ago, then I would have probably said history is like, who cares about history? It's in the past. Like, leave it in the past. But now, I think being a tour guide and then just taking up on a lot of history to actually learn the country itself. History is the foundation, it's the basis to actually learn like the modern practices or the modern culture, right? Like, its history is rooted in the upbringing of like contemporary, like, let's say Germany.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
or like anywhere in the world.
Yeah. So now that you're immersed in this culture, it must be difficult or challenging to try to make sense of things without a good sort of understanding of everything that's happened.
Mm-hmm.
And even like now that you've mentioned all the companies that are there, Puma and these big ones. What was it? What was the other one that you mentioned?
Pumas, Adidas, Siemens.
Siemens, that's right. Like all these
Siemens.
German companies, like clothing store companies, in fact, have major operations happening in Erlangen and this university that you're at right now too.
Mm-hmm.
It's very fascinating. So, okay,
Mm-hmm.
all right. So, thank you very much for giving me a little bit of an idea of Germany, and it's been 2 months only. So, you've given me a pretty good, the best as you can describe what it's like. But how about you tell us a little bit about your why did you get to Germany? Why did you go over to Erlangen, and what are you doing there now?
All right, so I'm doing my master's here right now. The program, it's called Standards of Decision Making Across Cultures. But that I find it was a group of Germans, or the faculty just kind of got together to make the program sound as I don't want to say fancy, but as descriptive as possible.
Progressive?
Maybe it's progressive is maybe a right way to put it. But
global,
like I find
global.
There's a better way to put the program. Like whenever people ask me, they're like, "Hey, what are you studying your master's in?" I just tell them interdisciplinary culture studies, because interdisciplinary in the sense that in the field of academia, like I did classes in politics, sociology, anthropology, economics. Right? It's a very broad range. So the master's I'm going to get, it's going to be a master's of arts. And I say culture studies because after I spend a year here in Erlangen, we go to Beijing for a semester. And that's our opportunity to do research for our thesis, which we're going to write when we come back to Germany on our last semester.
Oh, so you are international in every sense.
Yeah, pretty much.
The program is not rooted in Germany. It's sort of German minds coming together to try and extend their cultural understandings throughout the world, and that's why they basically poached you from Canada to come.
Genau, which is exactly in German. But yeah, so it's funny that you mentioned that, because the program itself is actually a startup program. It's only 2 years old. So the program's been running for 2 years, and I don't like to generalize Germans, but I've even heard this from German people itself, especially in the state of Bavaria, is that they are very traditional. In other words, meaning reserved people. So a group of minds that are open-minded, like my faculty that I'm in. This is actually a huge step for them to make the program like this, I guess, global, like international program. So like my program itself, there's 1 Canadian, 1 American, 2 Germans, 1 Chinese, 2 Russians, 1 Egyptian, and 1 from Belarus. So it's a global community in itself. Right?
What are what's like some work that you have been doing?
So I just wrote an abstract on American exceptionalism, which is actually very interesting because it just talks about how America is like this image of consumerism, right? And then they've accepted that, and that consumerism and capitalism is like the utopian imagery, or should be the utopian imagery of the world, right? But right now, before I came live with you, I was reading an article on educational reform post-Cultural Revolution in China, right? And that's what's going to be my term paper on. for Chinese cultural studies. So yeah, there's definitely like a lot of how do I say it? I guess information, right?
Let's unpack that a little bit. So
Yeah.
it's almost like a critique on the American dream, the idea that spending, buying, accumulation of things will be the sort of goal or dream or chase that most Americans feel like they need to do. And so if you're critiquing that, what is the counter argument to that? What is the opposite of that culture then?
I guess you could almost say Eastern collectivism versus Western individuality. So consumerism and this idea of critical thinking is a very Western concept or Western notion, right? Like you go to school and you're supposed to be critiquing, analyzing, or at least this is a very liberal arts perspective, is that anything that the professor tells you or any article that you read, you always have to analyze it and find a weakness for it. It's an idea of critical thinking, right? Versus like, let's say you compare that to Asian studies, whereas what's given to you is what you accept. You don't critique it, right? It's right. Like you don't question like what is being said. So I think that that's like a big factor. And in Europe, it's the comparison isn't that large in terms of consumerism, I guess you would say, just because I would say Europe is like Western Germany, like Germany is still part of the West, right? In my eyes. So like if I were to be in Asia, or like you compare it to Asia, it would be a whole different story. But one thing that I have noticed, not in an academic sense, but let's say like sustainability. Right? Like sustainability is actually one thing that I noticed that maybe Western Europe itself, but at least Germany practices and believes in more strongly than Canada. And I thought Canada was a leading. I thought Canada was leading in this sector. Like I thought especially with like people nowadays talking about how go green, right? Don't use plastic, right? Recycle. But in Germany, it's even the students, and you find that this demographic, the students are the ones that are usually the most rebellious. They don't like to follow. But I find that the students are actually the ones that set examples, right? Even for let's say the baby boom generation or the older generation, they strongly believe in this. And even sustainable energy, right? Such as wind energy. It is huge over here, and it's actually an ongoing political debate in Germany about possibly opening a nuclear factory, right? Just because what happened in Fukushima in 2011, and like I said, German people are they're not risk takers, right? They don't like risk. So the idea is, why have nuclear energy? Yes, it is useful, but at the same time, it's very environmentally problematic. Right, economically problematic too. So that's actually it's an ongoing political debate in this country.
And so, what are you planning to do? So maybe in a couple of years, what is this program? What is the program's intention?
The intention of the program is, I think, to be able to conduct research. So based off of my studies, some professions that I could pursue are researcher, which could eventually become an ethnographer, right? A policy advisor is also another thing that came up as well. But this field isn't, this study isn't really focused towards you trying to get into one profession. It's for you to build skills that are going to be beneficial not only in life, just like life situations, right? Lifestyle, basic social communications, but even entering the workplace. They build soft skills, right? Which is a very unacademic or new approach. Like for instance, like during your bachelor's, Alan, like what did you learn in class? Anything that you learned in class, was it actually beneficial to you outside of this classroom?
Yeah, no, I think I understand what you're saying is that it was just fundamentals. Like, no, a lot of the things that I've learned, especially with novels and the fiction that I read, have only been stored in the back of my mind. And it takes so much effort to actually think back to the time that I spent, a week or 2 weeks crafting an essay on, the implications of Israeli-Palestinian literature,
Mm-hmm.
like it's so hard for me to go back into that So yes, you're right. I don't think it's not instantly applicable in real life situations. So I see where you're going with this.
But yeah, like one of the classes, for instance, that I'm taking is called interdisciplinary methodologies, right? And the class actually goes through practices of how to conduct interviews and surveys and create questionnaires, right, for people that can not only be used during your master's thesis, right, when you're doing research in China, but also like these are things that you can use in the real world too. Like when is it not beneficial to know how to conduct an interview and to also participate in an interview, right? Like these are skills that you don't usually get taught in school. Like it's not very an academic thing. It's a very practical thing. So I think I really like the focus of the program. It is obviously it's a school, right? So there is some academic components in it. Like we have to write papers, right? But just what we're learning in the classroom itself, I find like it's definitely useful outside of the classroom as well.
Now that you're telling me about this program, it seems like it's building relationships and fostering a platform where people can communicate and bring people together, interdisciplinary, a think tank. It's almost like a think tank, and to understand how we can what are some best practices to approach people from all different backgrounds. How is Germany? What is Germany's I guess status in Europe at this current moment, like politically, socially? Do they look to Germany? Do Europeans look to Germany as the benchmark country that we want to all become, or are they looking at Germany as more of like, what kind of status do they have? Because Germany borders, some pretty, interesting countries. Like you've got Netherlands, Belgium, Poland, Denmark, Austria, Switzerland, France. Germany's right in the middle of it all. And we know that Germany, like from what I can tell, Germany is one of the more successful countries in terms of its economic policies and its open border policies in terms of, migration. Not to say that they're not fraught with their own problems and challenges with that. But what is Germany's status in Europe at this current moment?
Economically, politically, definitely up there for sure as one of the, I would say even maybe top 5, maybe even top 3. Germany is up here. France is definitely up here as well. Germany, I think in its bureaucracy and how it formulates its policies and just its state policies in itself, it's the reason why I think other countries want to follow. Like for instance, okay, so this is interesting. In Canada, we have free healthcare. Right? Like that's what taxpayers pay for. Right? It's for the free healthcare. In Germany, taxpayers pay for the education, right, for the youth, which is why international students and national students can get free education, because taxpayers, Germany believes that education is pivotal. It's primal and it's primary for growing as a person, right? So like you compare that in Canada, like for sure healthcare it's very important as well, but I support Germany's vision as well as to thinking that education is just as important, right? So I think it definitely sets a precedent for like other countries to follow, right? I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, I was gonna throw in as a comparison that there's other European countries, Scandinavian countries, for instance, right? They offer free education as well. I think Norway or Sweden. I'm not sure which one, but one of those offers free education as well. But the only difference is that the Scandinavian countries are very, very expensive, right? And that's just to get your basic necessities of food, for instance, right? Like eggs, milk. Like Germany, and it's funny comparing that back home to Canada, is that Erlangen actually is it's more of an expensive city, like for Germany, right? But still comparing to prices like back home in Toronto, it's ridiculously cheap. Right? Now, it's even funnier is that if you speak to, let's say, some people from Italy or from Spain, they say that the prices here in Erlangen are actually very expensive, right, compared to their home country. So it kind of gives you a little chart as to like what the price range is for each place.
So what you're telling me is that the standard of living in Germany is lower, and quality of life is probably better because of that, because you don't have to worry so much about, like, Toronto prices are manageable, right? Like you can go out and you can buy food, you can go and buy something for like $10 a meal. Like, what, give me some comparisons with food.
If I think if you're in Toronto and you worked, then yes, it's manageable. If you are in Germany, even if you don't work, it's manageable.
Huh.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. That's so really like funny. For me, for instance, a 1 liter carton of milk over here will cost me about €1. That's about maybe $1.50 Canadian.
Yeah.
A liter of milk in Canada will probably cost me, like, if I went to Whole Foods, for instance, that'll probably cost me what, maybe like $3. If I went to a regular grocery store like No Frills or something Metro, then maybe I'm looking at $2.50. Right? So that's a massive difference just for a carton of milk. Right? And even if you were to go to an organic store here in Germany, which you actually don't really have to, because everything is grown domestically, right? Like versus Canada, everything is flown in.
Oh, so yeah, that's a big part of that too.
Yeah, it's a big part. So like the prices itself, like they're not inflated around here. It's very manageable. It's a good price. I would say rent prices are expensive. Not as expensive as Toronto, but considering that it is a university city and it is a small city, it is expensive. The prices are, I'm paying about 350 euros a month. And in Berlin, for instance, my friend, she's paying about 500 euros a month. Now you convert that to Canadian, you're looking at maybe about what, $800, and you're in Berlin, and she's in like the core of Berlin, like a very desired area. Now, where in Toronto you think that you can get a place downtown Toronto for $800?
Yeah, I don't think that's possible. So okay, so from what I could tell right now, that Erlangen has done a really good job at attracting international folks to come in and to do work there. What would you tell a Canadian who's interested in traveling overseas to do schooling in Europe? What would you tell them, despite whether they want to go to Germany or but just to go to Europe to study as a Canadian?
Well, does money play a factor? Like, is money not a concern? Because that would make a big difference.
I think you've just shared a bunch of information about the quality of life being pretty good, even if you didn't make any money in Germany, or in where you are.
Well, I will say this: if I had to pay for school, it'll be a whole different story. Right. So I believe France also offers free schooling. Okay. Spain has, I believe affordable schooling is a good way to put it. Like there's I think about a semester cost of maybe about 1,000 euros.
Wow.
And such. Like for me, I pay 100 euros per semester, and that's just for semester fees. Right. And that semester fee actually includes a free Metro card that I can use.
It's almost as if education is becoming a pull factor for a lot of people to come and stay. And exactly. I'm not sure if these, if the German country, do people want more international folks to come to Germany? Is that what they're trying to go for, to create an international feel to it?
Yeah. So that's why I said Erlangen is a very up and coming place, because so I'm going to go back to that BlaBlaCar driver, because he's actually a software engineer for the university,
okay,
FAU. And then he was talking a little bit about the website, for the FAU website. Now, if you ever go to the FAU, which is a Friedrich Alexander University, on that website, you look at it and it's very easy to navigate. But is it appealing? Is it attractive? Like if I were to compare it to, let's say, a website from Harvard or Oxford, then I would say it's very plain and boring, right? And he was telling me that the head chair of the university wanted to make the school even more international than it is. So right now, actually, I said demographically speaking, Erlangen has a large Turkish population, but the university actually has a different demography. The majority of people are from developing countries. Right.
Okay.
Now that might have to do with because of free education, right? But the head of the university wants the university to be on the tier 1 universities, with those big name universities such as maybe McGill or Harvard or Oxford. So they're saying, yes, we want to be more international. So I'm saying, like, listen, if you want to do that, you can't play the ball game of how Harvard and Oxford, because one, they already have wealthy students. They have wealthy families that are paying for education. This is a free university, state-funded university. It's going to be difficult for you to be playing on a level game with them.
It's mind-blowing because you have to wrap your head around the fact that education is supposed to be how do you monetize education? And it has been, right? Like Harvard and Stanford and all these big-time colleges in the States cost $70,000 a year for a regular program, right? So they've successfully monetized education, which is a very absurd way of looking at it, because historically, you know, the earliest forms of education and a formal education through Socrates and Aristotle, none of that was monetized. Like even the Republic and any of these like big education, like the foundations of education, these big pieces of literature are all free. We can access it for free. But somehow, you know, we're at a point in our lives where we have to go to school and pay like an obscene amount of money just to get a degree. But again, it depends, right? Like if you're going to med school, and there's different, like, I mean, I'm generalizing, but it's fascinating to me that you're at a university that's charging little to no money and accepting students who are from countries that aren't exactly on the map. You know, it's a big risk, I think. It's like a huge risk. Or not, I don't know if it's a risk, but it's a bold statement that they're making. And I'm very interested in that. That's the biggest thing I'm taking from this conversation, is that there seems to be a shift from that idea of, you know, money, exclusive, go to Yale, come out, and you're going to be successful. And now you have institutions that are providing this sort of service. And I cannot imagine what type of generation will come from it, and what kind of thoughts and thinking would come from this endeavor.
I think when one word put easily, I just say thank capitalism for that, because like think about the West, right? And these large universities, they obviously are affiliated with conglomerates, right? Businesses. And yes, that obviously is helpful in the sense of, yeah, let's associate ourselves together. We provide work, we can fund you. It's almost like an investment. So I find that's a very Western concept versus here in Germany, because it's state funded, businesses don't really have an influence in schooling as much. I think that's like a big factor there, right? Is that these big names have not only funding from these wealthy families, but are also funded by businesses. And when you receive money from a corporation, there's no way that money is free.
However you dress it up, right?
Exactly, right? So like
you can dress it up as a foundation. You can dress it up as
you can say whatever you want. At the end of the day, I guess that's what you could say is politics. But here in Germany, that's why I'm saying it's more. Everything is. I think that the right word I'm thinking about right now is. There's more control. There's more state control here.
All right. I guess I'll. We can keep going on, but we both have things to do. So maybe my ending questions are you planning to travel through Europe and take that bus ride through different countries, or what's the deal? What are you planning on doing? Because I'm looking at this map right now. It seems like 4 hours to Austria, another 4 hours, and you're in Croatia, and then you're in Bosnia. And then Montenegro, and then Serbia, and all these other places. Are you planning to do the travel?
Yeah, I'm well, I gotta do my school, but I would say that I want to check out all of Germany, at least the east, the west, and the north. So Munich, I'm in the southern part, so I'll see Munich before flying to Japan. Okay. Berlin, I guess you could say that's northern Germany, but you can even go up north towards the sea, the North Sea, and I heard Hamburg is a beautiful city.
Okay.
So, and it's by the city, so they have seafood. So I'm actually very curious to see how Germans they cook seafood, right? Yeah.
Are there sushi restaurants in Erlangen?
There are sushi restaurants, more Chinese restaurants, but I mean, bread is the main diet.
Oh, okay.
Here. Yeah, everybody just eats bread and meat.
But I can't imagine like the artisan bread that they serve must be so good.
Oh, it's nice. Yeah, it's really nice. I can't complain about the sausages and the cheese and the beer and the bread.
Is it vegan friendly? Is it vegetarian friendly?
It's not that big. That's not really a big topic over
but
here.
Sustainability is though, right? It's funny, like
yeah.
you said that there's so many people who are just like back to, you know, like back to the roots and growing their own food.
Mm-hmm. But I think meat is just like you said, right? Like when you were vegan, right? Like meat is conditioned. You're conditioned to eat meat, and I think it's the same thing here in Germany. Is that I can't see it. A lot of them, I actually asked them. I said, "Would you go vegetarian?" And then it's like they laugh it off, or they just say, "There's no way I would even think about going vegetarian." Right? So imagine if I said vegan.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. I mean, how? So you're gonna be there for another? Are you coming back anytime soon? Like, what's
I'll be here until August.
And then you're gonna go to Beijing.
And I'm gonna go to Beijing. The plan is to go Beijing straight from Erlangen. But I mean, if there's problems with documentation and whatnot, then I'll come back to Canada and I'll sort that out in the summer.
Well, if you are, that's good because we can meet up and that's my plan. My next step would be China. Well, I'm going to be in Guangzhou, but then a flight to Beijing is going to be easy. And then from there, we can go to Shanghai and then we can do the Dota tournament that's coming up in August as well.
Absolutely. I don't know how to play, but I'll participate.
No, you have to play. It's like a big tournament. But anyway, that's cool, man. Dude, thank you very much for giving me some idea of what this amazing, mysterious country of Germany is. And you and I haven't covered, we've just covered like not even a slice of what there is here. So
this could have gone on for another hour for sure.
I want to take you, I'm going to give you some time to get used to the area and then let's do the show again and we'll catch up again.
Sounds good.
Sweet,
Thanks for having me.
Okay, man. Enjoy your studies and good luck with everything, dude.
Thanks.
All right. Cheers.
Talk to you later. Bye.